You had some jealousy growing up of your friends who had more. What would you think about back then?
I thought someday I'd like to have enough money to buy the things I wanted to buy.
Which was like a pool and a tennis court, right?
I wanted a pool and a tennis court. That was my lifelong dream. Yeah. So I would be very resourceful on how to, there was a pond across the street. I'd catch the tadpoles and sell them to make, 10 cents on a tadpole so I could go buy something. I didn't have the money to buy pretty much anything. So I worked. I mowed lawns. We had, as I mentioned to you, we'd have tag sales and sell anything we could to raise, make $10, $15. And I was a tennis player. I loved to play tennis. And I taught tennis and sold knives door to door. And I learned a lot of skills. I learned sort of how to be a salesman. The knife thing was particularly good.
Your daughter, Adrienne, when I was talking to her, she said she thinks you historically worked so hard because of, her words, generational trauma. What do you think it was about your parents that made you so determined?
My parents in many ways are very different from each other. My mom is very social, and my father was not. I got my social graces and my socialness from my mom, and probably my toughness from my dad. I always think about when I've gotten kicked in my career and when I get knocked down, I'm getting back up. My dad got back up. He didn't let anything bother him. He built a great life. So you can't kill me that way. I mean, you just harden me. You make me more determined. You're a Jewish mom. She wants a doctor, a lawyer. My brother became the doctor, my older brother. And so she was check on that. And then it was sort of, okay, I was supposed to be a lawyer. So I took my LSATs, my boards coming out of Brown. And
But by the way, this was amazing to me. You can't remember what law schools you got into, yet you can remember the room count of any hotel you visit.
Yeah, I can remember P&Ls. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I can remember if you name a hotel. We had 800 hotels that started hotels, and if I owned it, I could probably tell you how many rooms are in it today. And that was 20 years ago. So yeah, it's weird. I don't know. It's actually a big benefit to my career is my memory. Why don't I remember the law schools I got into? I know they were pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think I called my mom and told her I wasn't going to go, and she cried. She burst into tears. What are you going to do? How is this going to work? I said, I'll be a businessman. It'll be okay. And I had taken no business courses, so.
Did you feel like you were going to be okay at that time, or you were just trying to not?
I don't know.
make her
Yeah,
feel
I
bad?
did. I don't know why. I was too naive to know it wouldn't work out, but there was no plan. I took a job as a consultant. It was the only job I could get coming out of school because I knew nothing.
And you're broke living in New York.
I'm broke living in New York. I'm living in a one bedroom in a loft with a lot of cockroaches. I remember that, and no heat. But then I left that. I became a trader, an arbitrage trader, because I was making at that point $90,000 something. I thought it was more money than the Lord had. So, but I decided that I wanted to get an education, finish my education. I applied to two business schools, and I got into one, waitlisted the other. I don't know how they took me. I had no math courses in college. I thought I'd be the fastest in out at Harvard Business School in world history. I was terrified of math.
Why?
I never took Algebra 2 in high school. I barely made it through Algebra 1.
And how did you start to refine career direction from that point?
I didn't really. I wanted to work on Wall Street, actually, because that was where the money was. Remember, I was trying to get that pool and tennis court, and I left school $8,000 in debt. So I wanted to get a job on Wall Street, but everyone had worked on Wall Street except for me.
And so you couldn't get a job?
No, they wouldn't hire me. But it turned out that Goldman Sachs was interested in me in their real estate group. And real estate's interesting. It's physical. It's art. So Goldman made me an offer, and then this firm out of Chicago made me an offer, JMB. Neil Bloom, who's the founder of JMB, which was a very successful real estate firm,
Right.
he left a voicemail on my machine at my school and said I was their #1 recruit. And I was super flattered.
So you go there, didn't necessarily end well, but ends up presumably
shocking.
being the best thing that ever happens to you because
Yeah,
then you're...
I actually, I worked often directly for Neil Bloom, even though I was part of the acquisition team. And they were a very entrepreneurial firm. I saw them bop from idea to idea. And I watched Neil negotiate, sitting right next to him, and sometimes not understanding why he was asking for crazy stuff. And he would ask for crazy stuff so he could give the crazy stuff away and get the real stuff that he wanted. Like 1 and 1 is 3. I'm like, I know 1 and 1 is not 3. I'm not good with math, but it's not 3. And I said, Neil, 1 and 1 is not 3, it's 2. He goes, of course I know it's 2. He said, I'm going to give this away so I can get these other 3 points I want. I'm like, oh, interesting. He was playing chess and he was playing on a different board than I was. So it was interesting to learn, you know, when to grovel, when to capitulate, when to hold your ground, when to walk away from the table. And I learned all that at JMB. It's actually, you're right, it didn't end well. The RTC crisis, 1991, rolls around, the savings and loan crisis, and they're virtually facing bankruptcy. And I was one of Neil's favorite partners. But then they needed to cut overhead, so they told me I lost my job. And that was kind of shocking and devastating. I was 30 years old, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So, I mean, I went from going to every Bear game with Walter Payton and every basketball game with Michael Jordan to being like unemployed. And then wife was pregnant with my first kid. So I'm like, that was really something.
What was your lowest point then?
I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm like, I'll take a job for $50,000. I need a job. And I had known this guy that I had met when I was working or thinking about working for the Bass Brothers. And he said he'd back me in my own firm. And I'm like, oh, really? And being fired is no fun.